Hello and welcome to the Kitchen Conversations podcast. My name is Patrycja Rozwora and I'm the host of this platform where we speak about contemporary art from so-called Eastern Europe. In each episode, you're going to be introduced to one artist or researcher whose visual or activist practice sheds light onto the complex former socialist region with all its histories, cultures, languages, foods, but also traumas and their inevitable contemporary consequences. This podcast is a fully independent platform existing since May 2020, meaning it is not a funded project and it is self-run by me, myself, and I. If you enjoy the monthly conversations, please consider supporting the podcast by making a single donation on buymeacoffee.com/kitchenconversations or becoming my monthly Patreon via the Patreon website. All the needed links can be found in the show notes of this episode. Hello. Welcome to another sunny episode of Kitchen Conversations. Today I'm speaking to Alisi Telengut, a Canadian artist of Mongolian roots living between Berlin and Montreal, Canada. I first discovered her work at the Go East Film Festival last year, where she presented her mesmerizing animated film Lake Baikal. In this conversation, you'll get a glimpse into her unique creative process. Alisi animates frame by frame directly under the camera using mixed media to bring handmade painterly visuals to life. Her work explores themes rooted in indigenous and nomadic cultures of Mongolia and beyond. Enjoy our conversation and don't miss the chance to experience Alisi's beautiful films, available both on her website and at festivals around the globe. Don't be scared.
Yeah.
So welcome, Alisi, to Kitchen Conversations podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Thanks for the invite, Patricia.
Do you have experience in giving interviews?
Yes, but not on the podcast.
All right. So live more or on stage, Q&As?
Or maybe just, behind the scene person giving me a written interview. That's very different, I guess.
Yeah. Do you like it or...
Well, sometimes the questions are unexpected.
Those might also be the case with my podcast. But then it's more interesting, right?
Yeah, that's true. It's more, surprising.
This time I didn't send, sometimes I send like a draft of questions, but this time I didn't send anything. So I thought,
So I look forward to your questions.
Yes, exactly. And today you're in Berlin. You're here already for a few weeks. Or days?
Yes, actually I moved here the first time I came here was 2017 and then I left and came back in 2019 because I moved here before the pandemic for my PhD at Babelsberg in Potsdam. So I moved here around that time, so I was stuck here during the pandemic, but I was happy doing my own projects and working on different things. And then I got hired at the end of 2023 in Montreal in the university. So from that time till now, I've been traveling back and forth.
Canada. So that's far from here, right?
It's far.
How many hours flying?
It depends. I mean, the second flight is always longer. Usually I have to transit from Berlin to Zurich or another city, Frankfurt or somewhere else. And then from there, it's usually 8 hours. Yeah.
And you are originally from Canada?
I moved there when I was younger. I'm a Canadian artist of Mongolian roots.
Mongolia, that's also a very interesting region. I think for someone who lives in Europe, seems very far away. Mm-hmm. It's so big, actually. When you look at the map, it's a very big country.
Yeah, that's true.
There's a lot of mountains. That's what I recall.
Mountain, deserts, plateaus, and grassland, plains.
And how is the weather?
Over there, I think it's more like highland weather. For example, it's very sunny. And it could be very sunny and cold at the same time. While in Berlin, I felt like the weather is mild. It's quite warm, relatively warm. It's like gray, no sun, but warm.
So you've been really living like kind of all over the globe, I would say geographically. Tell me, I'm very curious how your artistic journey developed or started, or how did you decide that you want to be an artist, a filmmaker? Where did it begin for you?
Yeah, so a long time ago, I wanted to study in painting, but ended up it was really by chance. I went into film animation program as a bachelor student in fine arts. So, but turned out the bachelor in fine arts in the film animation is not the industry oriented program. It's not made for students who ended up working in 3D studios or Disney studio, become that type of animators. The program where I studied was really training students to become independent filmmakers, using animation as a medium to explore themselves or explore different subjects. So at the beginning it was difficult because I still had to learn the basic principles, right? Like drawing, like bouncing ball, like basic animation principles. I suffered. But then started a bit later, from my second year, third year, I learned that actually there are lots of artistic freedom. I could use animation as a medium with different materials to tell stories. And then from that moment on, I stayed in animation. Also at that time, I wasn't sure that I would call myself an artist because I was always like, oh, I'm an animator. But actually later I realized that I would frame myself more as an artist rather than an animator, because animator, you could be animator for a studio or for like an industrial setting, commercial setting. But my work is really, I wanted to make it because I want to tell the stories, or there's a message. Yeah.
So the message comes first and then the technique, let's say.
Yeah. Or I got the technique long time ago, and slowly along the process, along the way of animating, somehow it just become part of my practice.
Yeah, it's actually quite fascinating because as you said, I browsed quite far into your archive, into your also older works. And it's fascinating that you've defined your style quite long ago, or like almost with the first animations you did, you already had like your style. Is that true, or how do you see that?
Oh yeah, thank you so much for digging through my older work. I mean, the technique is called under the camera animation. It's a type of stop motion technique, but instead of working with objects, you work frame by frame with painting or other materials. You manipulate the painting or the materials under the camera, and you take a picture. Pretty much it's like a stop motion, but instead of stop motion with objects, you work with painting and other materials. So,
but it's always flat, right?
Yeah.
Or like it has a 3-dimensionality, but on a flat sheet.
Yes, yeah? Exactly. So the camera is fixed at the same place, and the artwork is fixed at the same, usually on a flat table or camera table or like some sort of surface, always fixed at the same place. And then when I animate or do a drawing or paint one frame and move a tiny little bit, I take a photo. And then when the pictures are played back in a sequence, it becomes animation, becomes the movement just is generated like that.
And what was the first animation or stop motion you created?
Yeah, as a student, I did lots of different exercises with different techniques. For example, I did actually traditional drawing. I also did pixelation. Pixelation is animating human instead of objects. I also worked with a film stock and different techniques. But I stayed with under the camera mainly because I was very inspired by the work of William Kentridge, the South African artist.
Wonderful, yeah. I love him as well.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. He also does photography, I guess. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe that's why I crossed
okay.
his work as well, yeah, through my photographic background, indeed.
Cool.
Is there like a film that you consider your first work, which wasn't an exercise, but it was like a finished piece?
Yes, I think it's my graduation film as a student from 2012, from 13 years ago. Yeah, the film is called Tengri. It's a short animated film. That one I think I would consider my first more complete work that I would still show till these days. Yeah.
And you have your own studio with like a table, camera, or how do you work? Like, how does your daily work look like when you're working on a piece?
Well, I think it depends on the projects, because I think each project requires a different setup. So I had a different studio at a different location. For example, my last film, Becoming Air, this piece, I had a studio in Berlin, Neukölln for about a year. Yeah, so I worked there a lot, almost half a day per day, every day. So that was my studio. But before that, I was working in Potsdam at Babelsberg for Lake Baikal.
Yeah, that was also created here in Germany.
Yeah, in Potsdam during the pandemic. I was traveling every day from Zoologischer Garten to Potsdam.
Wow. In the pandemic times, that's dark realities or past realities.
Yeah.
We don't really want to think about
No.
it. Actually, also my podcast was born in the pandemic, funnily enough. Because then also I think the podcast formats really started blooming, you know?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people were listening to podcasts, but also making podcasts because it was a format that you could still do alone at home
It's
in the
a great
lockdown.
idea.
Yeah, but I'm happy I can do the live interviews now. But is it like a meditative practice for you when you're like working on an animation? Is it, how does it feel? Because looking at your work, it's so meticulous, so like defined, so specific, and I think you spent a lot of hours on it. So I wonder how it feels for you. Like, what do you get out of it?
Yeah, you got it really right, because it took me a lot of time. Animation itself is a time-consuming medium because it's frame by frame. There are 24 images in 1 second, so each person would have to generate this much of image just to have 1 second of animation. So it is a time-consuming medium. At the end, slowly I realized maybe it's more like an embroidery or like a handwork, someone that is working by hand. That's the feeling that I slowly feel like that's the process it takes. Because like embroidery, it's like by a person. You work with the material, it's slow, it's by hand. I think maybe slowly it's like that. That for me, animation, it particularly my type of animation is a bit like embroidery or that type of handwork. Traditionally, yeah.
Very like hands-on, right? Because you also do use a lot of painting and drawing in your animations.
Yes.
What is the most used tool, would you say, when creating a film?
In the past was always oil pastel. Till now it's still oil pastel. I think oil pastel, I always create the base or the medium transition of color.
Am I imagining it right that if you, for 1 second, you need 25 images, you have then, after a finished piece, you have like 1,000 of drawings, or how does it work?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because lots of people thought that I have many pieces of paintings after one animation is done. But actually that's not true. Ended up I just have one piece of painting at the very end of a film. Or sometimes the last painting is destroyed. It's because it's kind of ephemeral, each frame. Each frame is based on one painting. The same artwork is fixed at the same place. So all the new image is always created based on the previous frame on the same artwork. So at the end, I don't have thousands of paintings. I just have one painting, the same one, being manipulated so many times.
It's pretty sustainable then. You don't end up with like piles of drawings.
That's a good way of thinking of it. Thank you. I didn't think about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the, I think, word of the year for sure, sustainability. So there you go. Yeah. So then you always like, you draw and then you clean it and then you draw again, or you draw on top of the...
Yeah, always draw on top of it, because in William Kentridge's work, he just smudged it because he used charcoal, and then he just changes his idea for the next image. He just smudges and then draws the next image and then takes a photo. And then, but for me, oil pastel cannot remove the color. The only way that it works is adding on the top, constantly adding on the top.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the end it became like a cake.
Yeah. Crazy. How many like boxes of pastels do you use per year or like per month? Or
Well, a lot. That's what I know. Yeah.
Crazy. So you're like definitely the person who buys the most pastels in their in their town or something.
Yeah.
So now we spoke more about the technique, because I think it's like, I would assume, one of the first factors that people would get like fascinated with your work. But in terms of subjects, what is important in your art and in your films? What do you want to speak about?
Well, started as a student, my work has been always about this indigenous knowledge, indigenous wisdom, especially from the area of Mongolia or Siberia, that this broader region. I guess it was because I was influenced by my grandparents. They used to live as a nomad on the grassland, so they have lots of wisdom of this human and their environment, the connection of human and the nature, the deep connection. So I think even though in our contemporary moment we're living in cities, it seems that the nomadic lifestyle is so romantic, is so far away from us, but actually the way how they connect to nature is still so relevant. It's very relevant to our contemporary moment with the climate change and all the disasters happening. Yeah.
You did live in Mongolia yourself. You were born there.
As a child, yeah. Yeah.
And what are some of like the memories you can recall in connection to nature and like the lifestyle your grandparents like shared with you?
Yeah, I think I heard a lot from my grandparents about the rituals that they were practicing. So how they respect nature, like on certain event, on certain days or months of the year. They have certain rituals to respect nature, give offering. Even though these rituals, they are still being practiced till present day. For example, there is one thing called ovo. It's like a stone shrine. You can still see it till present day. Actually, it's not only in Mongolia. In many regions around that area of the globe, actually, you can see this stone shrine called ovo. It's connected to Tengriism. Tengri is not only about the sky, but also the deity, the creation, the earth, or the universe. Yeah. So, but the actual word means blue sky. So, so ovo is like a stone shrine. And then in the past, people would pass, when you see this ovo, this stone shrine, you have to circle it 3 times and then put an offering. Like, for example, you put vodka, or you put, put something like precious. You consider thank you, and then you give it to the ovo. But in present day, I heard from a driver that was so interesting. The driver told me, I was asking him, okay, what are you going to do if you pass by an ovo in a car? And then he said, you just beep 3 times. Beep, beep, honk 3 times. Yeah. So I guess that's like another way in our modern life. In the city, people, how they continue this practice, they continue this ritual. Basically, I was very inspired by what my grandmother told me about all these rituals and connection to nature and animals and non-humans. I think they are very relevant in our contemporary time.
Can you like bring some of these rituals into a city life or into the contemporary life you're having in Montreal or Berlin?
Those would be difficult, but my grandmother told me, for example, there's like a fire worshipping ritual. It happens on December 23 of lunar calendar every year. So you would create a small bonfire. I don't know how I could make it in Berlin though.
Well, there's places you can go to, Temple of a Felt or...
Oh, yeah, right. So it's like still possible.
Areas where it's allowed, yeah.
Maybe you could tell me later. So, so on that day, people will make a small bonfire, and then you put like butter or candy, like alcohol or something that you want to offer to the fire god, and you put it in the fire, and then so that's the ritual that you would do on that day.
Cool. And is there also, because this is Kitchen Conversations, I also speak about food here. It's one of the topics. Is there something like also connected to food, or like the things we eat or take from or share with the earth, from the planet? Is there anything your grandma taught you?
Oh yes, I think there's one milk libation ceremony. It's to offering milk to Mother Earth, to nature, to river water. So that's the ritual that I think that's practiced in the summer solstice, or at important events. For example, Nadam. It's like a sports festival in the summer as well. And then why milk is used in this ceremony, not water or
Is
like
it
honey.
like animal milk?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think cow milk usually, because milk is considered crème de la crème. It's very important in nomadic cultures. You have so many cows and yak and all these animals that are bringing cheese, milk, and all this milk product food. So that's why milk is considered important in traditional nomadic lifestyle. That's why in the ceremony, they use milk as an offering.
So it's something like really special if you offer it to someone or to something, right?
Yeah.
Sharing something very valuable from your life with the other.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of your films, maybe we can go more into examples. The cool thing about your work that because you mainly work with short films or like only, right? They are very accessible and approachable. You don't need a lot of attention span to watch them, which is good for you.
Thank you.
And a lot of those films are screened at festivals, but also a lot of those can be seen on your website. I think this is always important for me that when my listeners hear the podcast, they can also check the work of the artist. So they have also a visual idea of what we are here speaking about. And one of a beautiful work you created back in 2023, Lake Baikal, or Baigal Nuur, like Baikal, the full title, was the one I saw at a festival, Go East Film Festival in Wiesbaden. And that's the one that I got to know you through. I would like to spend a few moments of this podcast devoted to this work because I think it's a very special one, not only because you made it and you're the guest on the podcast, but also because it speaks about a very special lake that is a kind of natural phenomenon and a magical, I think, place that is not so much known, I think, to people who are not from like the eastern part of the world. At least I was like a few times recently saying, I'm going to speak to this artist who made a film about the Lake Baikal. And they were like, oh, where is it? Let's check it on the map. I think like people from like Poland and East, from like Central Eastern Europe, like they would know that there is a lake like this and it's huge and it's like in the middle of Siberia and it's always very cold there. But still, I think it's not so, it's not like known as some other, let's say, big lakes in Europe or North America. So I'm happy that we can devote this podcast to this special piece of nature. So you made a film about it, animation film about it. Tell me, how did it start? Did you go there and you were amazed by its beauty and decided to make an animation, or how did it start for you?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Yeah, thank you. So how I got the idea of making this film has to go back to a long time ago. Is because when I was back in Montreal when I was younger, there's like a Mongolian community of many different Mongolian peoples from different regions. And I remember these two big sisters from Buryatia. I remember them super well because we were like hanging out. And I just remember they were saying they couldn't speak their language. And then it's also a Mongolian dialect, or Buryat Mongolian, they would call it. So that's how I remember it from a long time ago. And then before the pandemic, my mother went there to visit and she said, it's beautiful. She sent me some pictures. I was just amazed. And I also wanted to go there. So that was my plan, to go to Buryatia. And I also had some contact from my family over there. So that was my plan. And then the pandemic started all of a sudden. So I cannot go anymore. But I was planning, okay, one day maybe after the pandemic or when people got vaccinated, people will go.
It was hard to imagine that there will be an end of it, but yes.
Yeah. And then there was, lots of difficulties like travel advisories. And also there's lack of mutual recognition of the vaccine between Russia as well as European Union. So there were lots of difficulties and quarantine rules, etc. So I couldn't go. So I decided I'm going to make the film anyway, because I read about the lake and I saw pictures of the lake. And then plus my film is mainly about reimagining the formation of the lake. The lake Baikal is one of the oldest freshwater lake in the world. So it's a few million years old.
25 to 30 million years ago.
Yeah.
unimaginable.
Yeah. Yeah. So I just wanted to reimagine how the lake was formed, because I know that they had this volcanic activity. That's how the Rift Lake was formed. There's a crack on the earth, right? So so I decided I'm gonna animate the film, reimagine the formation of the lake anyway, even though I cannot go. And my plan originally was to also interview Buryat community to talk with them about their language and their vocabulary about the lake. So all of this couldn't happen at that time. I was animating the lake, and meanwhile, I was also in touch with Buryat people, Buryat Mongolian community in Montreal. And I asked a few of them, all of them couldn't speak their language, especially the younger generation. They couldn't speak a word. And I also talked to a few of Buryat Mongolian in Germany. Finally, the mother of a friend, she confirmed that she still speaks the language. I was really excited, and she lives in Saarbrücken since 20 or 30 years. So
Germany, yeah.
Yes.
What a coincidence.
Yeah. So I traveled all the way from Berlin to Saarbrücken. It's southwest Germany. And actually, it was so interesting. I said, I'm coming. Yeah, I'm going to visit you about this Lake Baikal, about the language. She was very excited. At the same time, she was nervous. When I met her, she said she was nervous because she hasn't spoken the language for many years. So I met this generous lady, Marina, the mother of a friend of mine. I gave her a list of vocabularies related to the lake according to my imagination. And she also contributed some vocabularies in the list. Because she cannot speak the language in full fluency, that's why the interview was made of only vocabulary, like words. So that like in a long time ago, when people learn a language, you always learn from words. You don't speak immediately, like
sentences.
fluently. Yeah. So it was only vocabularies related to the lake, about like sun, like for example, volcano, and then water system, fresh water, etc. And also I learned a lot from the interview from Marina, is that she said from her particular tribe, their ancestor is called, she said the word is called hunshovo in her Buryat Mongolian. Called hunshovo means literally translated as human bird. So she said from her clan, from her tribe, that's the ancestor. So it's again, it just shows me that how the deep connection of indigenous people with non-human, with animal nature is very deeply connected.
And yesterday, when preparing for the interview, I also watched a few like National Geographic or whatever productions about the lake, and it's really, really fascinating how big it is, and it almost looks like a sea. And of course, most of the time it's fully frozen or like big parts of it. And I think those communities who live around the lake, it's also not, those are not big communities, right? And most of it is like Buryat people, like some nomadic tribes that relied on those natures throughout their life. Can you tell a bit more about it? How does like the lake play into their life or their lifestyles?
Because I wanted to go there, and from what I understood is that traditionally Buryat people, they're nomadic. They have a nomadic lifestyle around the lake. Mainly, I think it's on the eastern seashore or lake shore of that area. That's Buryatia. And then there's a huge city there as well. There are also lots of ritual sites around the lake. And long time ago, there is a specific place, like with white marbles. And then they also found some carvings of women shamans, but from many, many years ago. But some of these places got destroyed during mining, white marble mining, probably in the 70s.
It was being mined from the inside of the lake or the shore?
It's around that area. Yeah, near the shore, there are lots of white marble and crystalline limestones.
Oh, yeah, wow. Incredible, huh? If you would go from Mongolia, you have to cross the northern border to Russia. How is, politically speaking, how can you actually cross that border? How is it looking at the moment?
During the pandemic, I couldn't go was because of this lack of mutual recognition of the vaccine. But after that, finally the pandemic eased a little bit. So Russia invaded Ukraine. So since that time, I think there are also lots of travel advisories for going into Russia. Lake Baikal region is really far from Ukraine. You could still go. But from what I understood is that there will be lack of flight situations, and also money transaction will be a problem. And also from another thing, what I understood is that the contact from my family that I had somehow just stopped replying me. Maybe they are afraid of communicating with foreigners. So yeah, maybe because of those reasons. And then also I know that during the war, Russia forcibly drafted lots of indigenous peoples from these minority regions, from Buryatia or from Tuva, these regions. Even though this minority or indigenous people, they shouldn't be drafted because they are their population is very small. But still the government was doing this by law, they are drafting these young people, soldiers. Yeah, that's a very tragic situation. Maybe that's why some people just stopped communicating with people in
for
other
their
countries.
Safety, right?
Yeah.
Perhaps. Really beautiful that short 9-minute long film entails so much of it. You premiered it in 2023, and I saw on your website that you've been screening it many, many, many times. A lot of screenings. That's so nice for you. Yeah, how did you feel about sharing this project with the world, and what kind of feedback did you get?
Of course, people are fascinated by the technique, etc. But I really wanted to say thank you to Marina, that the Buryat her generosity, that I met her and then I did an interview with her and I learned so much from her. For example, the Hunshovo, from her specific clan. Because if I didn't meet her, I would never know about this. So that was I really appreciate her support and help throughout this interview. For the animation, I think it's very interesting because I was imagining how can I animate icebergs? And then that is not made from ice. Like I was just thinking about what kind of material. According to what I've seen and what I've read, because of the limestone and crystals, I've been just somehow in my daily life, I started to notice stones everywhere. For example, on the way to the studio, in the back of the cafeteria, there are some stones. I was just looking at them and then try to maybe imagine if they would fit into my animation.
That's so nice.
And finally, I got some crystals from Switzerland, actually from a friend. She collected them from the mountain because she grew up in the mountain region and then she knows the technique where to find them. So she hand harvested the crystals and I got some from them and they were animated in the film to reimagine Lake Baikal.
That's a nice coming back, right? Mm-hmm. Using a material from Switzerland, then creating it in Berlin about a lake that is in Siberia, close to the place you were born, close to Mongolia. Yeah, not only are you speaking about natural phenomenon that I think everyone should know and at least watch documentary about it, but you also include this whole ethnographic and historical part of your history and the history of Buryat as well, people, and giving voice to those who are not being heard or whose language is is slowly disappearing. I think that's a beautiful thing as well.
The reason why I'm really looking forward to someone who could do an interview about Buryat language for this film was because the language is really endangered. It's an endangered language. So I was glad that I finally met someone who could still speak the language.
Did you learn something yourself?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there are definitely some vocabulary that is a bit different from Mongolian. But for example, some pronunciations are different. But but I understood most of the words that Marina talked about.
Yeah. And because I, of course, watched the piece with English translations, and I noticed that some words are being spoken in a different way, and the translation then is repeating the same. For example, I wrote some words down: weather, island, icebergs, thunder, wetland, and trees. I think those are the words that I took out that were in English, those words, but had more words to it in Buryat Mongolian language.
Yeah, I was also fascinated by that, especially the word lightning. I think thunder, yes, the word called thunder. There were 3 or 4 different versions describing the same meaning. So maybe they of course, it emphasized a little bit different nuances of the same phenomena. So that was very interesting. While I was doing the translation, I was like, maybe it's, I guess in English it's called thunder. Maybe, I don't know, there are other words.
Well, I like that you just repeated the same translation, because you really then understood that the language being spoken, it's so much more complex than the English language, especially when speaking about nature. I guess you have way more defined vocabulary for natural phenomenon than we have in English. I guess it's quite disconnected to the natural, right?
Yeah, that's a good point. It reminds me of in Inuit. I think they have many words describing snow, but we just have snow in English.
Totally, yeah. I think that's the example people can relate to, and something similar, yeah. And you at the beginning of the conversation, you already mentioned your newest recent work, Becoming Air. I thought maybe at the end we could speak about that one. Your newest 6-minute long stop-motion film about air, I assume.
This film explores the connection of human and breathing through the action of breathing. Oh, this is something we do all the time, but we don't realize it all. We don't notice it anymore. Through breathing, how humans are connected to the natural world, like air, the trees, ocean. Yeah, so because all the trees and oceans, all this organism are generating oxygen for us, and also from different generations. For example, some people passed away maybe 2-3 years ago. The same air molecule that one inside their lung could be at some point in our body. So that's the beauty of the connection of air. And this film was created, co-written and directed with another person based in Stockholm, Diego Galafasi. So we collaborated, and then the last part of this short film was used in pixelation technique, which is animating human. So we animated people from very young, from baby all the way growing to very old, and then all the way from growing old to young babies. So we animated by their height as well as their age.
Exciting. And did you develop also more awareness about your breathing while working on the piece?
Yeah, because I mean, it's so funny to work with the actors, because we still did the frame by frame animation, even though they were human. It's funny that we somehow noticed that when we take the photo, some of them, they're really like breathing, and then some of their mouths are really opened up, especially the younger children, because they got fascinated by what we do, I think. And then when the result came out, we noticed that some people are just really breathing, some people are holding their breath.
I definitely, when I'm stressed, I'm holding my breath.
I think me too.
Yeah. It's something you have to be conscious about to change. Mm-hmm. But also when working with sound, with narration, like doing the podcast, I think it's also important, like when you breathe, when you do the breaks and so on. So it's definitely something like that speaks to me, the topic, and also like the idea that like the molecules can be somewhere else in someone else. And that one, did it already premiere, or? Yeah,
it's screened in South Korea as well as in Interfilm Berlin in November. So this year there will be more screenings. It will be part of my exhibition at Rosa Lux in Berlin Wedding starting this Friday.
And last but not least, on the podcast, as I already told you, we speak about food, and we already spoke a little bit about a milk ritual. But is there any food that reminds you of home and is like giving you nice homey feeling, and that you make when you feel maybe a bit sad, or maybe you just want to feel a bit more cozy?
Yeah, I cannot make it, but I can buy it in supermarket here in Berlin.
That's convenient.
Guess what it is?
Maybe some tea?
No. I just had some this morning. I'm super happy.
Where is it from?
You mean the food?
Yeah.
No, it's from Germany, but
It's a German food.
Yeah, but the reason why I like it
Sausage.
No, not sausage.
No, you have to tell.
Okay, I will tell you. Quark.
Fuck. Ah.
It makes me feel so comfortable. I feel so happy every time I eat quark because it reminds me of all the yogurt, milk, and cheese and everything. Yeah.
Is it something you won't get in Montreal?
I mean, not quark, specifically quark. We have Greek yogurt and yogurt, but not, quark is a bit different.
And how do you eat it then?
I just eat it.
Just with a spoon?
Yeah, sometimes I with some little bit of blueberries on the top.
All right, somewhere like in a sweet direction.
Yeah, a little bit. And in Mongolia, we have something called urum. But that I cannot find it. Urum is like another type of cream. Mm-hmm. On the top is also cream, but the cream is a bit caramelized, all cream. And then inside is soft cream.
Mm-hmm. And it's a dessert then.
It's not sweet. You put it in the milk tea.
Oh, yeah. See, so I was good with the tea direction. Yeah. I knew that in this region, people like to drink tea with milk.
Yeah, and with salt inside. It's not the sweet milk tea, but the milk tea a bit like salty usually.
All right, and this one you cannot get in a shop.
You mean
in Northern America or
I don't think
Europe?
so. No, the urum. You mean this cream?
Exactly.
No, it's a very specific cream.
All right. And you told me before that for New Year's you visited your grandmother who lives in Mongolia. Mm-hmm. What did she cook for you?
But she's really old though. So
you cook for her or?
I mean, there are some other helpers who helps my grandmother cook, but I had lots of urum. It's like the cream.
That's what you had.
Also lots of khuruud. Khuruud is like also another type of cheese, a bit harder.
Cool. Is there anything you would like to share at the end?
For now, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to talk about all the projects and my work. Thank you. And I also know that your podcast is mainly focused on Eastern European and Soviet Union artists or cultures. But I'm super happy to be here that you invited me in extended way because my previous two work touches upon the regions in Russia.
Thank you so much, Alisi.
Thank you so much, Patricia. And we hope we can have some urum or khuruud.
Let's do that. Thanks.
Thank you.
And this was it for today. Thank you for reaching till the end of this episode. The next one is coming in 4 weeks, always on Monday. Please follow the podcast and leave a rating. I'm also happy to hear your feedback, so feel free to write me via Instagram or by email. All the needed info you will find in the show notes of this episode. In the meantime, take good care and we hear each other soon.